The billionaire sat in silence as the lawyer's words stripped him bare, until a trembling voice cut through the courtroom. "I can defend him." Everyone turned. No one expected the cleaner's child to speak. The courtroom smelled faintly of varnished wood and polish, a place where silence carried the weight of judgment, and words could destroy or redeem entire lives. Outside, photographers swarmed the steps, their flashes reflecting against the marble columns. Inside, the man at the center of their lenses adjusted his cufflinks with practiced precision. Leonard Hale, Billionaire CEO, leaned back in his chair as if nothing in the world could shake him. His suit was sharp, his expression colder than the winter glass of his skyscraper office, and yet, beneath it all, his eyes betrayed something else, a weariness only the most observant would notice. For years, Leonard had been untouchable. His empire stretched across industries, and his name carried weight in every boardroom. Yet, here in this courtroom, power didn't gleam like it did in the stock market. It clung to him like a shadow. He shifted slightly, ignoring the stares, and let his jaw tighten. He hated courtrooms. They reminded him not of law, but of betrayal. Far from the polished benches where lawyers whispered strategies and clerks shuffled papers, a boy sat quietly in the corner. His feet dangled above the floor, his shoes scuffed, his trousers one size too big. The boy's small hands gripped a battered sketchbook. He pressed a pencil against the page, drawing quietly. Heroes, capes, shields, swords. Eli's mother had been working here as a cleaner for almost 3 years. Every evening, she scrubbed the marble floors until her knees ached and her hands cracked. And sometimes, when there was no one to watch him, Eli came along. The courthouse was his second home. He knew the echo of footsteps in the hallways, the way the air smelled faintly of bleach in the early mornings, and which vending machine buttons gave out candy if you pressed them twice. He liked the quiet corners, the places where people didn't notice him. Invisibility had become something of a cloak for him. No one looked twice at the cleaner's kid. He was used to it. But Eli noticed things others didn't. He noticed the lawyers pacing, rehearsing words under their breath like spells. He noticed the fear that passed across faces just before a verdict was read. And he noticed Leonard Hale sitting in that chair, shoulders tight beneath the expensive fabric of his suit. Leonard didn't see him. Not yet. The judge's gavel cracked once, slicing the air. Order in the court. Eli's pencil slipped across the page, smudging his drawing. He frowned, rubbed it with his thumb, and kept sketching. Hours earlier, Leonard had stood in front of the window of his office, staring at the skyline. The city stretched beneath him like a living organism, lights blinking, horns blaring, movement never stopping. A kingdom he had once believed was his to command. But kingdoms weren't built on loyalty, he knew now. They were built on shifting sands of profit and envy. His assistant had brought him the news. The case would be brutal. His former business partner had brought in one of the fiercest lawyers in the city. The trial wouldn't just decide money. It would decide Leonard's name, his dignity, maybe even his place at the empire he had built. "Mr. Hale," his assistant had said gently, "they'll drag everything out in the open. They'll paint you as the villain." Leonard had smirked, the kind of smirk he had perfected at galas and board meetings. Let them try. But his hand had tightened around the glass of water he held, so hard he nearly cracked it. In the courthouse corridors, Eli's mother wiped sweat from her brow as she bent over the tiled floor. She hummed softly to herself, a tune Eli didn't recognize. Eli walked beside her, balancing his sketchbook on his forearm. "Stay quiet today," his mother whispered. "Stay in the corner. This isn't a playground." "I know," Eli said, though his voice held more curiosity than obedience. He paused as a man in a crisp black suit rushed past them, his cologne sharp and stinging. The man didn't even glance at Eli or his mother. Eli frowned and scribbled a little superhero in his book, a janitor with gloves that could clean away lies. He smiled to himself. When his mother's shift ended, she let him sit quietly in the back of the courtroom while she checked supplies. Eli liked it there. The stories that unfolded in court were louder and grander than anything he read in books. Heroes and villains, victories and defeats, all decided by words instead of swords. Today, though, felt different. Leonard exhaled as the lawyer across the room glanced at him, lips curled into a smirk. Leonard knew that look. It was the look of someone who thought they had already won. The courtroom's wooden clock ticked steadily. Eli shifted in his seat, his heart thumping for reasons he couldn't quite explain. He looked at Leonard again, at the stiffness in his posture, at the way his hand tapped once against the table before stilling. For the first time, Eli wondered if billionaires could look afraid. The judge cleared his throat. Papers shuffled. The trial began, and though neither knew it yet, the billionaire and the cleaner's son were on the verge of colliding in a way that would change both their lives forever. Have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people? Like no one noticed you until the moment truly mattered? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear. The lawyer's voice rang out with the clarity of a blade, slicing through the silence of the courtroom. Leonard Hale, he said, pacing slowly in front of the jury, is not the hero his company would have you believe. Behind the gloss, behind the skyscrapers and the press releases, stands a man built on greed. A man who abandoned loyalty, a man who used others as stepping stones. And now, when he is finally called to answer, he hides behind excuses. The words landed like blows. Leonard kept his face stone still, but his knuckles whitened as they pressed against the polished table. He could feel the eyes on him, reporters scribbling, strangers whispering, even the jury shifting uncomfortably. His empire, his name, everything he had bled for, being shredded piece by piece. The lawyer leaned forward, voice dripping with poison. This billionaire, ladies and gentlemen, has never known real work, real sacrifice. He wouldn't recognize honesty if it stood in front of him. Laughter rippled faintly from the gallery. Leonard swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. His carefully built armor was cracking, and for the first time in decades, he felt exposed, naked in a room of people eager to watch him fall. From the back, Eli's stomach twisted. His pencil slipped from his hand and rolled across the floor. He had been watching Leonard from the beginning, sketchbook balanced on his lap. To Eli, the man didn't look like the villain the lawyer described. His eyes looked tired, hurt, alone. Something inside Eli bubbled up, something he couldn't explain. He remembered how often kids at school mocked him for being the cleaner's kid. He remembered the sting of words that painted him as small, worthless. And now, watching the man in the suit shrink under words that cut deeper than swords, Eli's fists clenched. The lawyer turned, pointing a sharp finger at Leonard. And when this trial is over, you will see him for what he truly is, a fraud. The gavel cracked. Order, the judge barked. Leonard opened his mouth, but no words came. And then, I can defend him. The words tore through the air like lightning. The courtroom froze. Heads turned, necks craned. Whispers rippled across the benches as every gaze shifted to the back row, where a thin boy stood trembling, his fists balled at his sides, his voice louder than he ever thought he could make it. Eli's face burned, but his eyes didn't waver. I can defend him, he shouted again, his small frame shaking, but his voice steady with fire. For a moment, the world seemed suspended in glass. The judge blinked, confused. What? Who said that? Eli's mother gasped, dropping the rag she had been clutching near the door. Eli, she hissed, rushing toward him. Sit down right now. But Eli didn't move. He couldn't. His chest heaved, his heart pounding against his ribs. He didn't know what he would say next, but he knew he couldn't stay silent. The lawyer smirked, his voice dripping with ridicule. Your Honor, it seems even the janitorial staff's children have opinions. Shall we call them to the stand too? The courtroom chuckled. Eli's cheeks flushed crimson, but he lifted his chin. Leonard's eyes finally found him. For the first time since the trial began, Leonard looked truly shaken. Not by the lawyer, not by the accusations, but by the trembling courage in a boy's eyes. Order! The judge roared again, slamming his gavel. This is highly irregular. Remove the boy at once. Two bailiffs moved forward, but Eli blurted out. He's not what they say. He's not a liar. He's someone who tries. His voice cracked, but the words burst out raw and real. The room stilled again. Leonard stared at the boy, his chest tightening. He didn't even know this child, and yet in the moment when every voice was turned against him, this trembling, invisible kid had stood up for him. The bailiffs reached Eli, guiding him toward the back. His mother grabbed his arm, tears of embarrassment in her eyes, whispering apologies to everyone around. But Eli twisted once, shouting over his shoulder, Don't listen to them. He's not bad. I can tell. His voice echoed, bouncing against the wooden walls before fading into silence. The judge sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. Let's restore order. The boy is not a witness. Strike his words from the record. But the record didn't matter. The room had changed. People exchanged glances, uneasy. Reporters scribbled faster, as if the interruption itself was news. And Leonard Hale, billionaire, sat there frozen, his throat tight, his eyes locked on the door where the boy had disappeared. No one had defended him like that. Not in years. Not even the lawyers he paid millions to. Something inside him cracked. Not with shame. Not with fear. But with the faint, painful reminder of what loyalty sounded like. Back in the hallway, Eli's mother knelt in front of him, her hands gripping his shoulders. What were you thinking? You could have been thrown out, Eli. You don't interrupt court. Eli's voice shook. But he needed someone. They were all hurting him with words, and no one stopped them. His mother's face softened, torn between fear and heartbreak. She pulled him in her arms, whispering, "You can't save people like that, baby." But Eli wasn't so sure. And inside the courtroom, Leonard sat back slowly, staring at the empty spot where the boy had stood. For the first time, the billionaire wondered if maybe, just maybe, the child had already saved him. If you saw someone being torn apart in public, falsely accused, humiliated, would you have the courage to stand up like Eli? Or would fear silence you? Share your honest answer in the comments. The next morning, the city papers exploded with headlines. Billionaire CEO interrupted by cleaner's kid in courtroom drama. Child cries out, "I can defend him." Hale humiliated again, this time by a boy. Every photo showed the same moment. Eli, small and trembling, his voice caught mid-shout, and Leonard, frozen in his seat, staring at him with unreadable eyes. Leonard threw the paper onto his desk, jaw clenched so tight it ached. He didn't mind the press tearing him apart. He was used to that. But the boy, that boy, had made him vulnerable in a way he didn't know how to process. He should have been angry, should have dismissed it all as nonsense. But the words, raw, unfiltered, loyal, clung to him. He needed someone. Leonard rubbed his temple, scowling. Ridiculous, he muttered to himself. He's a child. He doesn't know what he's saying. Yet, deep down, something stirred. Something he didn't want to name. Underscore. Meanwhile, Eli sat on the apartment floor, hugging his knees, while his mother paced back and forth. "You embarrass me, Eli," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You embarrassed us. Don't you understand? People like us, we don't speak in rooms like that. We don't even belong there. We clean, we stay invisible, and we survive." Eli lowered his head, guilt flooding his chest. "But Mom, they were hurting him. I could feel it. And he just sat there, and nobody helped him. I couldn't just sit and draw." His mother knelt in front of him, gripping his arms. Her tired eyes softened with love and fear all at once. "You're just a boy. You can't carry the weight of rich men's battles. Promise me, Eli. Promise me you won't do something like that again." Eli hesitated. The memory of Leonard's eyes, shocked, softened, almost grateful, burned in his mind. But he nodded anyway. "I promise." His mother kissed his forehead, as if sealing the vow. But inside, Eli knew it wasn't a promise he could keep. Back in the glass tower of Hale Industries, Leonard's lawyers gathered around him, their tones sharp, almost scolding. "That child made you look weak." The jury saw pity instead of strength. "We need to control the narrative, Leonard." Leonard slammed his hand on the table, silencing them. "Enough." They blinked, startled. "I don't care about your narrative. The trial isn't over, and I don't need you wasting time on a boy's outburst." One lawyer adjusted his tie nervously. "With respect, Mr. Hale, the public remembers moments like these more than facts. We advise you distance yourself from the cleaner's kid immediately. No association." Leonard leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. "Association," he said quietly. "I don't even know his name." But the truth gnawed at him. He wanted to know. 2 days later, fate pushed them back into the same space. Leonard was walking through the courthouse corridor with his legal team, when he caught sight of a familiar figure. Eli, sitting cross-legged on the floor, sketchbook balanced on his lap. His mother was down the hall, sorting cleaning supplies. Eli glanced up just as Leonard passed. Their eyes met. For a moment, both froze. Eli's heart leapt into his throat. Should he say something? Apologize? Pretend he didn't exist? Shame burned his cheeks, but a stubborn spark whispered, "I'd do it again if I had to." Leonard's jaw tightened. He should have looked away, should have walked past without acknowledgement. But something in those wide, determined eyes made him pause, just for a second, before he forced himself to move on. "Mr. Hale," his lawyer prompted, "the courtroom is this way." Leonard nodded briskly, never looking back. But Eli had seen it, the flicker in his eyes, the hesitation. And for reasons he couldn't explain, it made his chest swell with something like pride. That night, Leonard couldn't sleep. He sat by the window of his penthouse, whiskey in hand, staring out at the city. The boy's voice replayed in his head. "He's not what they say. He tries." He had spent his whole life proving himself with numbers, deals, power plays. But no one had ever defended his character with such simplicity. It terrified him. It humbled him. And it was why he couldn't let it happen again. He whispered into the empty room, as if convincing himself, "I don't need saving. Not from child. Not from anyone." But deep inside, he already knew the truth. His armor had been pierced, and nothing could undo it. Back in their cramped apartment, Eli sat by the window, sketchbook open. He had drawn Leonard again, this time not as a suited billionaire, but as a man with cracks in his armor, standing taller because someone believed in him. His mother sighed as she folded laundry. "Promise me, Eli. Stay quiet next time." Eli traced the outline of Leonard's face in his drawing and whispered, almost too softly to hear, "I can't." Have you ever made a promise to stay silent, but deep down you knew you couldn't keep it? What happened when you finally spoke out? Share in the comments. I'm curious to hear your story. The courthouse cafeteria was never glamorous. Its tiled floor was dull with scuff marks. The overhead lights buzzed faintly, and the smell of burnt coffee clung stubbornly to the air. Leonard Hale, Billionaire CEO, had never set foot in such a place before this trial. Normally, his team whisked him away to high-rise restaurants or private lounges. But today, delays had stretched the proceedings, and his lawyers were still buried in paperwork upstairs. He needed a moment alone. He picked up a paper cup of coffee, black, bitter, and sat at a corner table. For once, no cameras flashed, no assistants hovered, just silence and the hum of an old refrigerator. Across the room, Eli sat at another table, his sketchbook open, a half-eaten sandwich in front of him. His mother was scrubbing nearby counters, filling the air with the sharp smell of lemon cleaner. Eli froze when he noticed Leonard. The man looked different here, without the courtroom's gravity pressing on him. He looked smaller, almost lonely. Eli swallowed, gripping his pencil. He told himself not to stare, not to say anything. His mother's warning rang in his head. Stay invisible. Stay quiet. But then Leonard's gaze lifted and locked onto his. For a moment, neither moved. Leonard's first instinct was to look away. Pretend he hadn't noticed. Pretend the boy was just another face in the crowd. But there was something undeniable about those eyes. Earnest, unguarded, unafraid despite everything. And before he could stop himself, Leonard spoke. "You draw." Eli blinked. His heart raced. "Why, he stammered, holding up the sketchbook like a shield. Leonard gestured faintly. "What is it?" Eli hesitated, then turned the book around. On the page was a half-finished drawing of a man in a suit, but with cracks running down his armor, light glowing from within. Leonard's breath caught. He recognized the face. His own. Why would you draw me like that?" Leonard asked, his voice low. Eli shrugged, suddenly shy. "Because you look like someone who's strong on the outside, but maybe not always on the inside." Silence stretched between them. Leonard stared at the sketch, at the honesty in it. No one in his world had ever dared to describe him that way. They either feared him or envied him, but they never saw him. Until this boy. Before Leonard could reply, Eli's mother swooped in, eyes wide with panic. "Eli, what did I tell you? Don't bother people." She grabbed the sketchbook, pulling it to her chest. "I'm sorry, sir. He won't trouble you again." Leonard raised a hand. It's fine. His tone was calmer than he expected. He's not bothering me. Eli's mother hesitated, caught between respect and fear. Mr. Hale, my son, doesn't understand. He just blurts things. Leonard's lips twitched, almost a smile. Maybe blurting is better than silence sometimes. Eli's mother flushed, murmured another apology, and walked away quickly, tugging Eli along. But as they left, Leonard called softly, "Nice drawing, kid." Eli glanced back, eyes bright despite his mother's scolding, and nodded once. Later that week, another delay kept Leonard waiting in the courthouse lobby. He sat on a bench, reviewing notes, when a voice piped up beside him. "Do you ever get scared?" Leonard looked down. Eli was there again, clutching his sketchbook, his legs swinging off the bench. Leonard frowned. "Shouldn't you be in school?" "Day off." Eli lied quickly, though his voice betrayed him. Leonard sighed. Scared of what? The trial. The lawyer. Losing everything. Leonard stiffened. He had spent his life denying fear, hiding it beneath layers of control. Yet somehow, with this boy, denial felt pointless. "Yes," he admitted quietly. "I get scared." Eli nodded, as if this was the answer he had expected all along. "It's okay. Heroes get scared too, but they still try." The words struck Leonard harder than any lawyer's accusation. He turned his gaze fully to Eli. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Eli's voice was small but steady. "Because I know what it feels like when everyone thinks you're nothing. And sometimes people just need someone to believe in them." Leonard's chest tightened. For a second, he couldn't speak. This boy, with nothing to his name but a sketchbook and stubborn courage, was saying words no one in Leonard's life had ever dared. Eli's mother appeared again, flustered. "Eli, there you are. I've been looking everywhere. I told you not to wander." She apologized to Leonard, tugging Eli away once more. This time, though, Leonard didn't stop them. He just watched, an ache forming in his chest. He was beginning to realize something terrifying. The boy's presence was slipping past his defenses, and for the first time in years, he wasn't sure if he wanted to stop it. That night, Eli lay in bed, sketching by the dim glow of a lamp. He drew Leonard again, this time not as a broken man, but as a knight standing tall, shield raised. At the bottom of the page, Eli scrawled 3 words in shaky handwriting: "You can win." And miles away, Leonard stared at his reflection in the glass of his penthouse window, remembering the boy's words. Heroes get scared too, but they still try. For the first time since the trial began, he felt a flicker of something unfamiliar. Hope. Do you think children sometimes see truths that adults are too proud or afraid to admit? Has a child ever told you something that stuck with you for years? Share it in the comments below. The courthouse clock chimed 3 times, echoing through the marble halls. Proceedings had been delayed again, leaving Leonard restless in a quiet waiting room. His lawyers had stepped outside to argue strategy, their voices bouncing off the walls in the corridor. For once, Leonard was alone, or so he thought. The door creaked open, and Eli slipped in, sketchbook tucked under his arm. His eyes widened when he realized the room wasn't empty. "Oh, I saw it." Leonard raised an eyebrow. "Do you make a habit of sneaking into restricted rooms?" Eli shifted his weight, fidgeting. "I wasn't sneaking. I was just looking for a quiet place." Leonard studied him for a long moment, then sighed, gesturing toward the chair opposite. "Fine. Sit. But if my lawyers find you here, they'll have a heart attack." Eli slid into the chair, setting the sketchbook on his lap. Silence stretched, heavy but not uncomfortable. Leonard leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly. "Why do you keep showing up, kid? What do you want from me?" Eli hesitated. Then, quietly, "Nothing." Leonard almost laughed at the absurdity. People always wanted something from him. Money, power, favors. But this boy just sat there, chewing his lip. "You risked making a fool of yourself in court for nothing." Leonard pressed. Eli shrugged. "You look like you needed someone." The words hit harder than Leonard expected. He looked away, jaw tight. "People like me don't get to need." "Not in public." Eli frowned. "That doesn't sound fair." Leonard almost smiled. Fair. He hadn't believed in that word for decades. Minutes passed before Leonard finally spoke again, his voice quieter. "You want to know the truth, Eli? I built my company with someone I trusted more than a brother. We started with nothing. Shared meals, shared dreams. Then one day, he decided he wanted more than half. He wanted it all. He's the one suing me now. The one with that lawyer tearing me apart in there. His hand clenched into a fist. He betrayed me, took my trust, twisted it into a weapon. That's what happens when you let people close. Eli's eyes widened. So, that's why you look so broken. Because he used to be your friend. Leonard froze. Broken. He hated the word, but he couldn't deny it. Yes, he admitted finally. His voice was flat, but the admission cost him more than any financial loss. Eli hugged his sketchbook to his chest, hesitating. Then he whispered, "My dad left us." Leonard blinked, surprised. What? He just walked out. One day he was here, the next he wasn't. Mom tried to tell me he loved us, but if he loved us, why didn't he stay? The boy's voice cracked, though he tried to mask it with a shaky laugh. Guess he thought we weren't worth it. Leonard felt something inside him shift. He saw it now, the mirrored wound. The boy who had been abandoned by a father, and the man who had been betrayed by a brother. Different stories, same scar. "I'm sorry," Leonard said softly, surprising himself with the sincerity in his tone. Eli shrugged, blinking quickly as if to chase away tears. "I used to draw superheroes all the time. I thought maybe if I made enough, one would come to life and fix things. But they never did." He looked up, eyes searching Leonard's face. "Do you ever wish someone would save you?" Leonard's throat tightened. He wanted to deny it, to laugh, to tell the boy that men like him didn't need saving. But the truth sat heavy in his chest. "Yes," he whispered. Eli nodded as if he understood completely. Then he flipped open his sketchbook, showing Leonard a drawing. A knight with a broken shield, still standing tall, cracks glowing with light. "That's you," Eli said simply. "You're not ruined. You're just not finished yet." Leonard stared at the page, his heart pounding. No boardroom, no jury, no billionaire in his circle had ever given him such a gift. To be seen, not as a monster, not as a fraud, but as a man still fighting. Just then, the door opened, and Leonard's lawyers stormed back in. They froze at the sight of Eli. "What is he doing here?" one snapped. Eli jumped, clutching his sketchbook to his chest. Leonard's gaze flicked between them, and for a moment, he considered dismissing the boy to protect himself. Pride warred with something deeper. "He's leaving," the lawyer said firmly, stepping forward. But Leonard surprised himself. "No," he said sharply. "He stays." The room fell silent. The lawyer's eyes widened. "Mr. Hale." "I said he stays," Leonard repeated, his voice steady. Eli blinked, stunned. For the first time, someone powerful hadn't shoved him aside, hadn't silenced him. And in that fragile, impossible moment, the invisible boy and the untouchable billionaire both realized they were no longer as alone as they thought. That night, Leonard found himself replaying the boy's words. "You're not ruined. You're just not finished yet." And Eli, lying in bed, clutched his sketchbook against his chest, whispering into the darkness, "Maybe heroes are real after all. Do you believe broken trust can ever be healed? Or do some scars never fade?" Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. The courthouse garden was a small square of green tucked between stone walls, a place where weary jurors smoked and clerks ate sandwiches on their breaks. That afternoon, Leonard found himself there, away from the noise of legal arguments. He sat on a bench, loosened his tie, and closed his eyes for a moment, letting the autumn breeze cool his skin. "Do you ever get tired of looking so serious?" The voice made him open his eyes. Eli stood a few feet away, sketchbook tucked under his arm. His grin was mischievous, playful, utterly unafraid. Leonard arched a brow. "And what makes you think I look serious?" Eli hopped onto the bench beside him, swinging his legs. "Because your face looks like it's allergic to smiling." Leonard snorted despite himself. "Allergic?" "Yeah," Eli said matter-of-factly. "Like if you try to smile, your whole face will explode or something." Leonard chuckled, a sound so rare it startled even him. "You have quite the imagination." Eli grinned wider. "Better than being boring." For the next hour, they sat together. Eli showed him sketches, heroes with capes, villains with crooked grins, even a doodle of Leonard himself wearing armor, made of dollar bills. "You really see me like this?" Leonard asked, half amused, half stunned. Eli shrugged. "Sometimes. But then sometimes I think you're more like this one." He flipped to another drawing. A man in a suit, holding out his hand to a small boy standing in the shadows. Leonard stared at it, throat tight. That's oddly specific. Eli looked away, embarrassed. I just draw what I feel. For a long moment, Leonard said nothing. Then, quietly, he admitted, when I was your age, I didn't have anyone who would have drawn me like that. Eli's gaze snapped back to him. Then they missed out. Days blurred together as the trial dragged on. But in between tense courtroom battles, Leonard and Eli's odd friendship grew. They met in the cafeteria, the waiting rooms, the courthouse garden. Eli teased Leonard about his fancy ties. Leonard asked Eli about his favorite superheroes. One afternoon, Eli challenged him to a game of tic-tac-toe on the back of a napkin. Leonard played with ruthless precision. You cheated, Eli accused after losing 3 rounds in a row. Leonard smirked. I don't cheat. I just win. Eli narrowed his eyes. That's what villains say. Leonard chuckled. Maybe I am the villain. Eli shook his head firmly. No, villains don't get scared. Heroes do. And you told me you get scared. Leonard stared at him, stunned silent. Somehow, this boy had reduced his entire identity to a truth no one else dared to speak. One evening, as the sun set over the courthouse steps, Leonard walked out to find Eli and his mother waiting by the doors. His mother was carrying cleaning supplies, looking exhausted. Eli, however, perked up when he saw Leonard. Mr. Hale. Eli called, waving. Leonard paused, then walked over. His mother stiffened, unsure whether to bow, apologize, or pretend they hadn't seen him. But Leonard surprised her with a simple, good evening. Her eyes widened. Oh, good evening, sir. Eli grinned. I beat my teacher in chess today. She said I'm sneaky. Leonard smirked. Smart, not sneaky. There's a difference. Eli puffed his chest proudly. Exactly. His mother blinked at the exchange, then whispered softly to Leonard. Thank you. He doesn't talk to many people like this. Leonard's expression softened. He's got plenty to say. The world just doesn't always listen. Her eyes shimmered with quiet gratitude. For the first time, she saw not the billionaire on the magazine covers, but a man who spoke kindly to her son. That night, Leonard found himself replaying Eli's laughter, his drawings, his unfiltered truths. The boy had become a mirror he didn't know he needed, showing him not only who he was, but who he still could be. For Eli, the bond was just as real. Lying in bed, he whispered to his sketchbook, he's not like the others. He actually sees me. A week later, Leonard walked into the courthouse to find Eli waiting outside the courtroom doors. The boy handed him a folded piece of paper. What's this? Leonard asked. Open it. Leonard unfolded the paper to reveal a drawing of himself standing victorious in court, arms raised. Above him, in bold block letters, Eli had written, Don't let them break you. Leonard's chest tightened. He slipped the paper into his pocket. Thank you, Eli. Eli beamed. You're welcome. And for the first time since the trial began, Leonard didn't just feel like he was fighting for his empire. He felt like he was fighting for something far greater, proof that he could still be worthy of someone's belief. Do you think laughter and small kindnesses can heal wounds deeper than words ever could? Has someone's humor or honesty ever pulled you through a dark season? Share your story in the comments. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Reporters filled every seat, cameras waiting to capture the next crack in the billionaire's downfall. Leonard sat rigid at the defense table, jaw clenched, eyes forward. He had grown used to humiliation by now, but today felt different. The opposing lawyer, slick and sharp, rose to his feet. Your Honor, I'd like to submit into evidence a witness statement. It concerns the defendant's, how shall we put it, relationship with a courthouse janitor's child. Gasps rippled through the room. Leonard's blood ran cold. His eyes flicked instantly to Eli, seated quietly in the back row beside his mother. Eli's small body stiffened, his wide eyes locking on Leonard's. The lawyer smirked, pacing. Yes, a child. A boy who has been seen fraternizing with Mr. Hale during recesses. Sketching him. Talking to him. What business does a billionaire CEO have with a janitor's son? Unless, of course, it's a performance to gain sympathy. Laughter bubbled through the crowd. Cameras flashed. Leonard's face burned. This innocent connection was being twisted into a weapon against him. He opened his mouth, but the lawyer cut him off. Tell me, Mr. Hale, are you so desperate for redemption that you've staged a friendship with a child? Using a poor boy's loyalty to soften your image? Is he your new PR stunt? Eli's mouth dropped open. No, he cried out, standing. His small voice cracked through the silence. It's not like that. But the lawyer ignored him, circling Leonard like a shark. Or perhaps it's even more manipulative. You let this child defend you in public, just so you could appear what? Human? Broken? Worthy of pity. Eli's mother pulled him back down, whispering frantically. Tears filled Eli's eyes as the room laughed at him too now. Not just Leonard. Leonard's chest heaved. The rage inside him was volcanic, but underneath it, something colder twisted. Shame. The boy he'd allowed close, the boy who had dared to believe in him, was now being dragged into the mud. And Leonard didn't know how to protect him. The judge banged the gavel for order. Mr. Hale, do you wish to respond? Everett turned to him. His lawyers leaned close, hissing. Say it's nothing. Deny it. Cut ties immediately. Leonard's fists trembled. He looked at Eli, small, trembling, betrayed by the very stage Leonard had dragged him onto. The weight of it was unbearable. Yes, Leonard said finally, his voice hard. It's nothing. The boy means nothing to me. The courtroom erupted. Eli froze as though struck. His throat went dry, his heart slamming against his ribs. Nothing. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The man he had defended, the one he had believed in, had erased him in a single sentence. His mother's hand gripped his shoulder, but it felt like a wall closing in. He yanked free, clutching his sketchbook, and bolted from the room. Leonard watched him go, his heart splintering with every step, but pride held him rooted in his chair. The cameras were still flashing, the judge still staring. He couldn't take it back. Outside the courthouse, Eli stumbled into the alley, chest heaving. He flipped open his sketchbook with shaking hands. The pages blurred through tears, the night, the shield, the drawings of Leonard standing tall. All of them mocked him now. With a choked sob, Eli ripped a page from the book, crumpled it, and hurled it against the wall. You said I mattered, he whispered, voice breaking. But I'm nothing. Just nothing. That night, Leonard sat in his penthouse, lights off, staring at the skyline. His lawyers celebrated in the next room. Brilliant move, distancing yourself from the boy. The jury won't see you as manipulative now. But Leonard couldn't hear them. All he could hear was the echo of his own words. The boy means nothing to me. He had spoken them to protect himself, to survive. But in the silence, he realized he hadn't just lost a case. He had destroyed the only genuine connection he had left. He remembered Eli's eyes, wide with betrayal. The way his small shoulders had crumpled as though carrying a weight too big for his frame. And for the first time in decades, Leonard Hale, Billionaire CEO, put his head in his hands and wept. Across town, Eli lay in bed, clutching his sketchbook to his chest. He had drawn one last picture that evening, a knight turning away from a small boy in the shadows. Above it, he had written one word in jagged letters, liar. His tears soaked the page as he whispered into the darkness, heroes don't leave. They don't say you're nothing. The bond they had built, fragile, improbable, beautiful, lay shattered, scattered like the torn pages of Eli's drawings. And neither knew if it could ever be rebuilt. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted most? Did you forgive them? Or did it change you forever? Share your story in the comments. Your words might help someone else heal. The trial recessed for the weekend, leaving the courthouse strangely silent. The reporters had packed up, the cameras stopped flashing, and Leonard returned to his penthouse like a ghost inhabiting glass and steel. He stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, city lights flickering beneath him, yet all he saw was the boy's face. Wide eyes, trembling lip, the sketchbook clutched like a shield. The boy means nothing to me. The words echoed until they no longer sounded like his own voice. They sounded like the very betrayal he had suffered years ago. His partners, his friends, the one who had left him broken. He had become the same monster. He poured himself a drink, but it sat untouched. His reflection in the glass stared back, hollow, alone. For the first time in years, Leonard Hale hated himself more than he hated the world. Across town, Eli sat on the fire escape outside their small apartment. His mother was inside, scrubbing floors on her knees, humming faintly to cover her son's silence. The sketchbook sat open on his lap, pages fluttering in the evening breeze. The newest drawing was harsh, jagged. The knight's armor cracked wide open, but instead of light, darkness poured out. Eli traced the lines with trembling fingers. His chest hurt, Not like when he scraped his knee or bruised his arm. His pain was heavier, sharp in a way that made him feel smaller than he already was. He said I was nothing. The words looped like a curse. For days, he didn't draw Leonard again. Didn't dare. But he couldn't stop thinking of him, either. The laughter over tic-tac-toe, the quiet in the garden, the moment he had admitted he was scared. Eli whispered into the night, "If you were lying about me, were you lying about all of it?" By Sunday evening, both of them were suffocating in silence. Leonard sat at his desk, staring at a blank legal pad. He had made fortunes through logic, through cold calculation. But the boy had never been a calculation. Eli was a truth, raw and uninvited, and Leonard had crushed him under the weight of pride. The choice before him was sharp. Keep the walls up, finish the trial, walk away untouched, but empty, or risk the last of his dignity by reaching for the boy he had hurt. For Eli, the choice was simpler but just as heavy. Believe Leonard's words and close the book forever, or cling to the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, Leonard hadn't meant them. Both sat in their separate corners of the city, hearts pulled by the same question. Is pride worth more than love? Monday morning arrived gray and cold. Leonard's car pulled up outside the courthouse. Cameras swarmed as usual, but his gaze scanned past them, past the flash of lenses, searching the steps. And there he was, Eli, small, clutching his sketchbook, standing beside his weary mother. He looked thinner somehow, paler, as if the weight of betrayal had shrunk him. Leonard froze mid-step. The boy saw him and looked away. It was worse than anger, worse than tears. The absence of recognition cut deeper than any insult. Leonard's lawyers tugged at his arm. "We need to prepare." But Leonard shook them off. For the first time in the trial, the courtroom could wait. He walked toward Eli. Every camera turned, lenses clicking furiously. Reporters leaned in, eager for scandal. "Eli," Leonard said softly. The boy kept his gaze fixed on the concrete. Leonard's chest ached. He dropped to one knee, lowering himself to the boy's height despite the crowd, despite the world watching. "I lied," he whispered. "What I said in there, it wasn't true. You're not nothing. You're the only thing that's felt real in years." Eli's lip trembled. "Then why did you say it?" "Because I was afraid," Leonard admitted, his voice raw. "Afraid of being weak. Afraid they'd use you to destroy me. I thought I was protecting you by pushing you away. But I only hurt you instead." Tears filled Eli's eyes. He wanted to believe him, wanted to leap into that fragile truth. But the wound still burned. "You made me look like a fool," Eli whispered. Leonard's throat tightened. "I know, and I'll spend as long as it takes proving I was the fool, not you." The boy studied him, torn between pain and the stubborn flicker of hope that refused to die. His mother touched Eli's shoulder gently. "You don't have to forgive him, sweetheart." Eli looked at Leonard one more time. The billionaire's eyes weren't cold or proud. They were pleading, broken, real. Eli hugged his sketchbook to his chest. "I'll think about it." Leonard nodded slowly. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a crack in the wall, and that was enough to breathe again. As Leonard rose, the cameras exploded with noise. But for once, he didn't care. Inside the courtroom, the trial resumed. But in Leonard's chest, the real battle was no longer the lawsuit. It was the war against his own pride. That night, Eli drew again. This time, the knight knelt before the boy, offering him a shield. Not perfect, not whole, but honest. He stared at the drawing and whispered to himself, "Maybe heroes can make mistakes too. Do you believe admitting weakness is a sign of true strength? Or does it make people more vulnerable to being hurt again?" Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to know your perspective. The last day of the trial dawned bright, sunlight pouring through the courthouse windows like a promise. Reporters clustered outside, voices sharp with anticipation. The case had dragged on for weeks, filled with accusations, betrayals, and spectacle. But today it would end. Leonard Hale sat at the defense table, his suit pressed, but his heart restless. He had faced hostile witnesses, ruthless lawyers, and a jury ready to believe the worst. Yet none of it haunted him more than the look in Eli's eyes when he had called him nothing. Today wasn't just about winning or losing a lawsuit. It was about proving, maybe to the jury, maybe to the world, but most of all to Eli, that he could be better. When the judge called the session to order, the opposing lawyer wasted no time. His voice dripped with confidence, as he delivered his closing statement. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he said smoothly, "this is not about contracts or numbers. It's about character. Mr. Hale has proven himself manipulative, ruthless, untrustworthy. He parades a poor boy in front of cameras, then discards him when inconvenient. Is that the mark of an honest man, or the final act of desperation?" He gestured dramatically toward Leonard. "Do not be fooled by money or theatrics. Justice demands we strip away his empire and see him for what he is, a fraud." The jury murmured. The lawyer smirked, confident of victory. Then it was Leonard's turn. He rose slowly, his hands trembling, not from fear of the jury, but from the weight of the truth he carried. He glanced toward the back of the courtroom. Eli sat there, sketchbook hugged tightly to his chest, his mother's arm around his shoulders. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Leonard inhaled deeply. "Your Honor, members of the jury, I have spent my life building walls. Walls of steel, of money, of pride. I believed they would protect me, but all they did was trap me." The room stilled. Leonard's voice cracked, but he pressed on. "Yes, I was betrayed by someone I trusted. Yes, I fought back with everything I had. But in the process, I became what I hated, cold, unreachable, untouchable, until a boy reminded me what it meant to be seen." Gasps rippled. The judge leaned forward. Leonard continued, his gaze flicking toward Eli again. "The truth is, I lied to this court when I said he meant nothing to me. That was the most shameful moment of my life. Because that boy, he defended me when no one else would. Not for money, not for fame, just because he believed I was worth something. And I betrayed that belief." His voice faltered. He forced himself to stand taller. "So, if you believe I'm a fraud, then so be it. Take everything from me. But do not believe for one moment that his courage was staged. That boy is more honest, more loyal, more brave than I have ever been." Silence gripped the courtroom. Cameras clicked. Even the opposing lawyer looked thrown off. Leonard bowed his head. "I don't know if I'll win this case, but I know I don't want to walk out of this room the same man who walked in." He sat down, his chest heaving. The judge called for a recess before deliberation. The jury filed out. The room buzzed with whispers. Leonard sat alone at the table, head bowed, when he felt a small shadow fall across him. He looked up. Eli stood there, sketchbook trembling in his hands. His eyes were wet, but his chin was set with stubborn courage. "You didn't have to say all that," Eli whispered. Leonard's throat tightened. "I had to, because it was the truth." Eli blinked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he opened the sketchbook and tore out a page. He laid it on the table. It was a new drawing. Leonard, no longer cracked, no longer broken, standing tall with a shield in one hand. Beside him, a small boy holding the other hand. Leonard's vision blurred. He reached out with trembling fingers, touching the paper as though it were made of glass. "Does this mean?" Eli's lip wobbled. "It means you're not nothing either." And with that, he threw his arms around Leonard. The man who had thought himself untouchable, who had built walls higher than skyscrapers, wrapped his arms around a boy who had broken through them all. The jury returned hours later. The verdict: Leonard Hale would not lose his empire. His ex-partner's betrayal was exposed as greed, the case dismissed with prejudice. Cameras exploded with flashes as the court adjourned. But Leonard barely heard any of it. He was too busy kneeling beside Eli, whispering, "Thank you, kid. You saved me." Eli grinned through tears. "Told you heroes get scared too, but they still try." That night, instead of celebrating with champagne in his penthouse, Leonard sat at a modest diner booth across from Eli and his mother. Plates of pancakes and fries filled the table. The boy laughed as Leonard lost at tic-tac-toe for the first time. His mother watched quietly, eyes soft with something like disbelief. For years, her son had been invisible. Now, someone powerful saw him, truly saw him, and treated him as priceless. Leonard glanced at Eli, then at her, and said words he hadn't spoken in years. "I'd like to be around, if you'll let me." Her eyes filled, but she nodded. And for the first time in decades, Leonard Hale felt not like a billionaire, not like a defendant, but like a man who finally belonged. Weeks later, Eli finished his sketchbook. On the final page was a simple drawing, a knight and a boy walking side by side into the light. At the bottom, in bold, hopeful letters, he wrote, We win together. Do you believe love and loyalty can come from the most unexpected places? If you've ever found family in someone who wasn't supposed to be family, share your story in the comments. It might inspire someone who needs it.